Welcome to the weekly wrap-up here on the Prepared Mind channel. If you're over on YouTube, welcome. And if you want daily briefs, daily reports, daily editorial and opinion, then you need to go over to Patreon, the Prepared Mind at Patreon. Because we talk about a lot of this stuff in depth. But today we're doing the weekly wrap-up. That is, are we getting closer to shit hitting the fan or not? Well, it's Saturday morning at high noon. I'll be doing the live broadcast, answering your questions on Patreon. Anyways, let's get down to some business, huh? All right, well, it's Saturday. Welcome to the weekly wrap-up. Guess what? Well, you may not have heard it, but all non-essential employees in Iraq, in the city of Basra, at the U.S. Embassy consulate, have been evacuated. Why? Well, because that lady named Ford said that Kavanaugh might have touched her inappropriately at a party 35 years ago, but yeah, you were paying attention to that. Or at least the media was. Meanwhile, there's supposedly some big-ass trouble brewing with Iran. Closer to shit hitting the fan? You bet. Oil prices went up this week? You bet they did. Over 5% up, I believe. Go ahead and take a look at the news for yourself. Oil went up. Precious metals ended the week up. Very interesting stuff occurred. Why? Why is oil up? Well, Iran, they could shut down the Strait of Hormuz with some military action. They could threaten to embargo the West. They're pissed off at the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Israel, the United States, because last Saturday, one of their parades in Iran was attacked by ISIL. Basically, the terrorist military faction wing arm of the CIA. That's how I see it. Based on their actions and what they do, those terrorists seem to always do stuff that benefits the deep state. Yeah, so they said non-essential employees, you're out of Basra. The Secretary of State says it's because of the security risk, because of Iranian threats. The Iranians are pissed off. They were hit with a false flag attack, and they're blaming the U.S. and other nations. And now they're threatening Iraq. And they're saying if it happens again, you won't be safe in Iraq. Now, I don't like any of this. I don't like the idea of war. I don't like the idea of an oil embargo. But I'm expecting those things to happen. Because chance favors the prepared mind. I'm ready for it. Are you? Right? We need to have food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense. We need to have a plan. We need to not be taken by surprise. We need to understand the 10-mile radius around where we live, and who is in there, and what those people think, want, believe, and how they're going to react based on what you can guess their level of awareness, their level of preparedness is. So let's take a look at that. Well, let's see here nationally, the stock market hit all-time highs this week, and we're back up at those levels. We finished the week a little bit lower, but we're still at all-time highs. What does that indicate? Well, it indicates that people are willing to throw money into a gambling arena, not to buy companies or portions of companies, but to compete with other people to buy stocks which invest, not really invest, but rather fund those companies. I wish people would line up outside my front door and bid and barter and bang up the price against each other of how much money they can give me, hoping that I'll return the investment later. That's what buying stocks is. It's the hope that in the future someone will pay more money for a stock which was funding activities of the corporation. So yeah, wouldn't you like people bidding to compete to give you money, hoping that you will eventually make some? Look at the PE ratios. Look at those on companies and tell me that they're not way overinflated. All right, so in response to that, and we've known it's been coming because of the inflation that the Federal Reserve admits is there, but that they play down. But they're saying it's too high, but they're playing it down. So they're raising interest rates. What does that mean? It means it's going to be more expensive for you to finance your credit card, to buy a car, to make a house payment. Right? All of a sudden, rates are going up. You bet, harder to make payments. The national government, as in the United States, that funny little corporation based out of the District of Columbia, it's going to have to pay more interest on the money it borrows to fund its activities that you and I are on the hook for. Are we getting closer to shit hitting the fan? Well, last I checked, the national deficit is over $21 trillion and growing. Plus, some really smart people discovered there's an extra $21 trillion kind of off the books, just sitting there. And we're supposed to pay that back, and the interest rates are going up because of inflation. But I don't know a whole lot of people whose personal lives are doing really great. I mean, they're out there. A lot of people are successful. But for the most part, wages are flat or down. What does that mean? It's going to cost you more money to get through the month because of interest rates. But you're not going to get more money to do it. So, they're raising rates to counter inflation, and, shit is getting closer. The poor are getting poorer, and yeah, the rich are getting richer. Funny how that works. Now, speaking of the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, let's talk about the emerging market debt. We used to have this thing called superpowers and first world nations, and then there were these things called third world nations, and I guess that means there's second world nations. But Turkey, their lira, their form of currency, their version of the dollar, it's taken a plunge, over 40% lower just in the last few weeks, the last month. They are in big trouble. Why? Because they have dollar-denominated debt. You see, foreign nations need to spend dollars with other nations. So Turkey uses US dollars to buy things from Germany, and Germany uses US dollars to buy things from France. And France uses US dollars to buy things from Italy. And it goes round and round, and everyone's using dollars. In order to get those dollars, they cash out bonds, they do their little money games. But they have dollar-denominated debt. They have to pay that back. But when the US dollar goes up higher in value, right, it'd be like someone going to your bank and saying, well, your money is only worth half as much, but you still have the same monthly bills to pay. How would you like that business? That's why all these other nations are pissed off. Now, why do they have to do that? Well, there's this system called the SWIFT system. The SWIFT system is the international exchange system. It's like there's a dedicated line, phone line, almost literally a dedicated phone line by which wire transfers from nation to nation occur in US dollars. So in order to transfer money, you have to have those dollars. And you're not allowed to transfer rubles or yuan or yen or anything else across these wires. It's all controlled by the US, and it's called the SWIFT system. Well, guess what? Russia and China have said, screw it, we don't want to be on that. Now, years ago, there was talk about the petro-yuan, that is, China paying for its oil because it's now the #1 oil consumer on the planet. They said, we don't want to use dollars, we don't want to use the yuan. We want a petro-yuan. We want our own currency to buy oil from Kuwait. I believe they started with Kuwait and now Saudi Arabia. Right, so they started this petro-yuan, and it's being traded, and it is already past Brent crude. It is growing every day in power, in usage. Russia, same story. They're trading yuan for rubles back and forth between Russia and China. They are not using the SWIFT system. Now, how the SWIFT system is used to control, to maintain U.S. dominance around the world. They use it to badger other countries, to influence them, to extort them. If the U.S. puts sanctions, let's say, against a country like Iran, they say Iran can't get money through the SWIFT system. And no one's allowed to do business with them. So let's just pretend that, let's pick a country. Norway wants to do business with Iran. They do a dirty little side deal. And we catch them and go, hey, you're not supposed to do any business with Iran. You are being sanctioned now. You're being penalized by the U.S. You can't use the SWIFT system, right? And they can put them into a situation where they have to pay a penalty. They're subject to sanctions. So the EU, basically, along with China and Russia, they've said, we've had it. We don't want the SWIFT system. We want our own system of exchange where we can trade our own currencies with each other and with anyone we want. Essentially, this is like the kids in the house telling the parents how they're going to do business and what they're going to eat and when they're going to go to bed. But who is the U.S.? You can't do this. You can't use the argument of moral superiority when they aren't morally superior. You can't expect others to behave and play well when your country doesn't play and behave well. In other words, there's a full-on rebellion. Shh, don't tell anyone. Right? Pay attention to Kavanaugh. Pay attention to Washington, D.C. Pay attention to all the bullshit. And by the way, watch some ridiculous television show and don't pay attention. But that's what's going on. You want to talk about an economic crisis. Holy crap, the dollar is not going to be the world reserve currency when other nations, other trading zones say we're not using the SWIFT system, we're not using the dollar. They're selling off their bonds, or they're sold off. Russia and China among the largest. They're selling off bonds. Who is buying bonds? And bonds are used to fund our nation. The U.S. government sells government bonds, and they promise to pay them back in the future at a higher interest rate than what you can get at your bank. And it's considered safe. Well, the U.S. never defaults. Actually, they have. But they never default, and they're considered safe. But that funds the government. If Germany, Russia, China, Japan don't buy U.S. bonds, oh yeah, Japan's selling theirs as well, then who is buying those bonds to fund our government? We like to talk about how we pay taxes to fund our government, but guess what? They sell bonds to other nations and then they pay them back. The system is on its knees at this point. The sword isn't on the neck, but it's getting closer. Are we getting closer to shit hitting the fan? You bet. Because when people are scared, right? When they're scared and they're angry, and then you put hunger on top of that, you can pretty much bet we're going to have a chimp out on an international scale. People are going to go nuts like a bunch of raving lunatic animals. Some areas not so much. Other areas look the fuck out. Right? The de-dollarization, nations borrowing dollars, US dollars to do business amongst themselves, they don't want it anymore. China and Russia are loading up on gold and silver. Loading up. So is India. Right? Why? Because if their currency isn't backed by something real, who's going to want it? If we're not going to trade just US dollars amongst ourselves because the US printing press has been off the rails, right, and it's devaluing all of their currency, why? Why do they want to participate? So we're going to have a new system coming soon enough. And if you don't think that's not a shit it's the fan event, then you might as well put your head back in the sand or back in a dark orifice and just relax, right? So, I haven't said a whole lot all week about the Kavanaugh hearings. I wanted to wait till the end of the week to see what happened, to see what came of it. It is an example of the political and social escalation in the wrong direction towards shit hitting the fan. Right? The feminist wackos are out in droves. They want blood. They want Kavanaugh's blood. We've had 3 women that have come forward. The first one is a doctor of something, I think psychology, and her last name is Ford. She may have one of those hyphenated names, but I'm just going to call her Ford. She claims that in high school there was a party 35 years ago, and that supposedly, reputedly, maybe, possibly, the man who has been nominated to be a Supreme Court justice touched her. And she was scared, and she was in a room and away from everyone else. She has no evidence. She has no proof. She has no witnesses. She can't produce any information. It is her word alone against a man who has spent his life as a judge, as a lawyer, right in front of the public. Up until just last week, no one had anything bad to say about this guy. They talked about his policies and everything else, but at the 11th hour, the last minute, good old Senator Feinswine, Dianne Feinswine, she's a senator from California. She came out and did what? Oh, well, by the way, we've got a sexual harassment allegation. Thank you, #MeToo. Thank you, feminism. Thank you, socialist, degenerate, feminist movement. This came out, but there's no evidence. There's no witnesses. There's no police report. In fact, sexual assault used to mean rape. Now apparently this woman was touched. She was scared and men were around, and that is now sexual assault. Be that as it may, there's absolutely no evidence or proof that Kavanaugh was involved. None whatsoever. Yet his family and he are being lampooned. They're being belittled. They're being threatened with physical violence. You don't think that there's a social breakdown right now in our nation? That there's not a huge dividing line between those who want communism and socialism and those who want freedom? You bet there is a hard line, and it's getting harder. It's a fence that has to be bigger, taller, stronger, and thicker between the left and, we'll say, freedom is on the right. Because the social fascists and social communists on the left, they want blood. They want Kavanaugh's head on a platter. It is incredible to me. The man came out and said, never was there, didn't have anything to do with it, yada, yada, yada. Right? But she, with a few words, which appeared to me to sound like lies, it's a non-believable story. It's bullshit. She's going to take a man and his career down, but why? Normally people go, well, what does she have to gain? She has everything to gain. Because this woman is a radical feminist. Radical feminist, not just your everyday, run-of-the-mill, on-the-street feminist, but a radical feminist. And she has a chance. The better she sells her lie, the better the odds that this man will not sit on the Supreme Court and overturn Roe versus Wade. That's what this is about. Feminist dogma. Left-wing politics. Division politics. Not constitutional, but the politics of divisiveness. Now, that was woman number one. Well, I've still got number two and number three. Woman number two, I believe her last name was Ramirez. She was at a college party, and apparently they were playing spin the bottle or some sexual game. But she was there. She was there. She was invited. She showed up. They're playing these games. And she says that she never wanted to touch a penis on a man, which is ridiculous, or see a penis or have a penis near her. She wanted to stay a virgin until she was married. She sounds like Mother Teresa. She's made it sound like she is pure and clean as the wind-driven white snow. She is just the impossibly untouchable, immaculate, good girl. Yet she's at a party with alcohol, who knows what drugs, who knows what sex going on in other rooms, and she's playing a game. Well, somehow she got all confused. You see, she got confused. And there was a dildo being passed around too. Oh, by the way, kids, leave the room. It's going to get nasty from here on out. There was a dildo in the room, and she was really drunk. Now, if her virtue and her morality were so high and so strong, and such a ingrained part of her belief system and lifestyle, why did she continue to drink there? Why did she continue to play games? Why didn't she get up and leave the way a good girl would have? Well, she's not a good girl. She's lying, as far as I'm concerned. Her story makes even less sense than that of Ford, Dr. Ford, that lady. This lady, Ramirez, hers makes even less sense. Because there's a lot of confusion, and she turned around or fell over or something else, and somehow, magically, Brett Kavanaugh, his penis landed on her face or something like that. Absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. She is to blame for being at that party as much as anyone else is to blame for being at that party. She is to blame for being at that party and playing sexual games as much as anyone else was at that party playing sexual games. Did anyone else have their penis out? Were any other girls involved in this? Were girls putting their boobs on guys? Who knows? College kids. But wait, do we just take her word? Well, someone said, hey, I can't believe it, Brett Kavanaugh touched his penis to Ramirez's face, right? Debbie, I think is her name. Yeah, it was Debbie. Well, why would they call out and use Brett Kavanaugh and say both names? Were there 6 or 7 Bretts at this huge frat party? You know why? Oh, that's what she needed to have in order to say she remembered. I remember both names. But Debbie or Betty or whatever her name is, they only said Betty. I guess there was only one Betty there or one Debbie there. So they didn't need to use her last name. But the whole story smacks of bullshit, and it took her hours to sit down and really concentrate. Really think about what happened. So that she could be sure that when she pointed at Brett Kavanaugh, she could believe her own story. I mean, she knew that she had the facts straight. No, she had to sell herself on the story. That's called confabulation. Self-hypnotic bullshit memory regression technique. In other words, it's crap. Once again, no witnesses. There's no witness that saw Brett Kavanaugh take his penis out, put it on her face. There's no witnesses. She hasn't appeared yet in front of Congress as far as I know. But her story is more bullshit than the other stories. And once again, Brett Kavanaugh says, not me, I didn't do it, and he's the one who's under oath. These other women are just shooting their lips off. Their lawyers are shooting their lips off. They're not under any oath or obligation to tell the truth. They're there to destroy Brett Kavanaugh. It is politically dividing this nation. It is also causing what? A loss of faith in the political system. The political system controls the economic system, which controls the military system. The social order in our country is heavily divided along socio-political lines. Right? This anti-man, anti-patriarch bullshit of the left is bleeding over into everyday life. Not just everyday life, but into national and international politics. So, what about this third woman? Oh, you're going to love this. I can't even remember her name, and you know what? I don't want to. She has said that Brett Kavanaugh was responsible, unless she's changed her story again, but last I really heard and paid attention, and I did pay attention because I was shocked, that Brett Kavanaugh organized parties where girls were brought in, systematically drugged, and gang raped, and he participated. This girl went to more than just one party. She went to several parties. And ultimately, she ended up as one of the victims of Brett Kavanaugh. Can you imagine being Brett Kavanaugh's wife, his daughters, his family, his extended family, his co-workers, his classmates, his students, his colleagues? Everybody is being subjected to these lies about Brett Kavanaugh. And it's hurting him, and it's not hurting these women a bit. In fact, they'll probably be writing books and making movie deals. They're going to benefit from contributions from other pink pussy hat wearing feminists. They're out there. You bet. They'll support these women left and right. So this is amazing. This third woman knows that women were being drugged and raped, and she didn't say anything to the police. There's not one police report. Not one that I'm aware of. Because she knows it happened and she didn't do anything to it, and then she went to a second party where it happened again, she is now, as far as I'm concerned, an accessory to a crime. Because she didn't do anything about it. Because she didn't warn those other women. Maybe she said, well, I warned them, and they kept doing it anyways. They kept drinking and taking the drugs. She did this apparently multiple times. What, 3, 4, 5, 6? How many gang rape parties does this third woman have to go to where Brett Kavanaugh is organizing this orgy of disgusting, despicable behavior, drugging people and raping them. And she doesn't do anything. She doesn't go to the police. She doesn't tell her teacher. She doesn't tell her roommates. She doesn't tell anybody. Nothing is done. She's an accessory to that crime as far as I'm concerned. Both after the fact and before the fact. Because in the next party she went to, she should have known it was going to happen again. Oh, Brett's having another party? Well, we know what's going to happen there. And she did nothing about it. Now she's an accessory as far as I'm concerned. Accessory before the fact. And ultimately, this girl who is, she must be retarded. She shows up and eventually she drinks the poisoned, pickled, drugged up Kool-Aid and she gets gang raped. She doesn't file a report with the police. She doesn't tell anybody. It just happened. Apparently, we've got some things that are going on here that are quite wrong. Apparently that was acceptable behavior back then, so there's no crime. But it's a crime today? Well, no, it was a crime back then to drug someone and have sex with them. Whether it was 35 years ago or 25 years ago or 5 years ago or 15, it doesn't matter. Crime, rape, bad, not good. But she participated in it by going to these parties and not doing anything about it. But now we're supposed to believe her story, that Brett Kavanaugh organized these rape orgies, these drugging orgies of sexual assault, rape. We're supposed to believe her? We're supposed to take her at her word with no witnesses? You know, this isn't really about Brett Kavanaugh. This is about the nature of the political system and where we're at. This is about the nature of society and what it thinks is and isn't acceptable. It's not acceptable to drug people and rape them. And it's not acceptable to lie about people, to make up bullshit. Right? And this third woman, guess who her lawyer is? Michael Avenatti. The very same Michael Avenatti that is representing Stormy Daniels, who has absolutely no evidence of any wrongdoing and has absolutely nothing to do with Trump and what's going on. He's just trying to destroy his credibility, smear his name, and he's a douchebag of a lawyer. And now he's representing this third woman whose story is full of inconsistencies, zero evidence, zero witnesses, zero corroborating facts. But she's allowed to put this stuff out there, alleging it, in order to defame and destroy the reputation of Brett Kavanaugh. Because they don't want an anti-abortion, pro-Second Amendment, constitutional-leaning judge appointed to the Supreme Court of the United States. We are this close to having small-scale partisan war in this country. I don't want to call it a civil war, but I think it's going to be partisan war, as in hot spots, pockets of shit hitting the fan, where people just throw absolute fits, where there's riots, where there's looting, where there are gangland-style beatdowns of people who don't agree with the liberal, radical, communist left. That's coming. It's coming, and they are exciting it. They're finally getting themselves worked up into a frenzy. You need to be ready, folks. That is this week. Are we closer to shit hitting the fan or what? In my opinion, yes, we are. Yeah, we are. I can't see any way around it. I can't see anything that's happened this week as wholesome and satisfying and convincing me that everything's getting better. No, it's not. The lies coming out of Washington are worse than ever. The lies coming out of radical leftists wanting stage time and camera time and personal attention and personal vendetta against the constitutional, God-fearing, freedom-loving American right wing. Wow, what a fucking week. Look out, next week is going to get crazier. I mean, I'm still waiting for the FISA documents to be declassified by Trump. That thread is on the burner. That could be a nuclear-style release that exposes the names of many, many of the players on the left and the right in politics, high up at the top, who have been participating in the corruption and the attempted coup d'etat of the President of the United States. Doesn't matter what his name is. It's the President of the United States. Wow. What a week. Get prepared. Go to the preparedmind.club. That is your site for all things prepper, from products, conversation or blog, chat rooms. We've got everything over there. And again, if you don't come to Patreon, it's $2 a month. If you don't come over there, you don't get the daily feeds, the daily videos that are much like this, only in depth on ideas and different concepts having to do with prepping, product reviews, etc., etc., etc. Get prepared, because chance favors the prepared mind is yours. You guys be cool. I'll see you all Monday. And for everyone on Patreon, I'll see you at high noon Pacific Standard Time. Semper Fi, Godspeed to all, and stay frosty.